Page 12 continued. Question number 5. Shakespearean tragedy is rooted in melodrama. Within quotes. Examine the view with reference to Macbeth. Answer. The Elizabethans were bred on Seneca. The sensational elements of Senecan tragedy, its blood and thunder, its murder and madness, its ghost and supernaturalism, have a strong appeal to the Elizabethans. Seneca and Thomas Kyd were the early masters of the Italianate tragedy of intrigue and passion, portraying men and women impelled by jealousy, sexual desire, revenge or love, and directed by misfortune into horrible crimes. The plots teem with strong external action, intrigue, suspense, and horror. High declamatory speeches mark the characters. Elizabethan dramatists, including Shakespeare, have a shot at the Senecan type of tragedy. They did not try to achieve in their plays the refinement and culture of Greek dramas. Macbeth as a tragedy approximates very closely to the Senecan model. Apart from its ghost and sensational elements, its murder and madness, the play is Senecan in, quote, its exhibition of a tyrant in action, its revelation of his innermost soul, and its demonstration of the just retribution that invariably awaits him, unquote. Following the model of Senecan tragedy, the Elizabethans did not adhere to the Aristotelian dictum that the overthrow of a bad man is not a tragedy at all. They were content with, quote, quote, the high and excellent tragedy that maketh kings fear to be tyrants, unquote. The lines from Seneca's Oedipus, which, as Dr. Dover Wilson suggests, would be a suitable motto for Macbeth, and thus translated in his 10 tragedies. Quote, whoso the cruel tyrant plays, and guiltless men doth smite. Next line. He dreadeth them that him do dread, so fear doth chiefly light. Next line. On causers chief, a just revenge for Blondie minds at last. Unquote. Macbeth was the tyrant of Scottish history, and the play was written for the delight of a Scottish king. Moreover, it had for the Elizabethans a didactic significance as a tragic mirror for magistrates. Dover Wilson's comment is pertinent. Quote, indeed, it almost looks as if in the writing of it Shakespeare had consciously in mind Sidney's famous description of, quote, high and excellent tragedy that openeth the greatest wounds and showeth forth the ulcers that are covered with tissue, that maketh kings fear to be tyrants, and tyrants manifest their tyrannical humours, that, with stirring the effects of admiration and commiseration, teacheth the uncertainty of the world, and upon how weak foundations golden roofs are builded. Unquote. Page 13. Thus, Macbeth is rooted in melodrama. The witches and their macabre rites, the blood-bolted ghost apparitions coming out of a blazing cauldron, gruesome murders, madness, a criminal hero, these are the ingredients of Macbeth, and these are the very features of a melodrama. But Shakespeare makes a moving tragedy out of these melodramatic elements. Shakespeare has melodrama. He never writes a melodrama. It has many sensational elements to make it theatrically effective and to pander to the taste of the Elizabethan audience, but it has not enough to make it merely theatrical. The subtlety of characterization, the inwardness of the hero, the diversity of contrasted characters, the profound significance of words and images, the enchantment of poetry and the mystery of atmosphere lend a depth of introspective significance which is Shakespeare's own. Question 6. Write a note on the supernatural in Macbeth. This is from CU Honours Paper 1995 and 2003. Or, quote, the interest of Macbeth is largely the interest of the supernatural element in it. Unquote. Discuss. Or, elucidate the significance of the role of witches in the development of the tragedy of Macbeth. This is from CU Honours Paper 2001. Or, comment on Shakespeare's treatment of the supernatural in Macbeth. CU Honours Papers 1995 and 2003. Or, to what extent are the witches in Macbeth responsible for the forces of evil unleashed in the play? CU Honours Paper 1998. Answer. The supernatural in Macbeth has a very significant role to play in the drama. It lends to the play a weird enchantment. It creates an uncanny atmosphere of mystery and awe, without which the play's theme cannot be made vocal and resonant. The supernatural in Macbeth consists of Banquo's ghost and the witches and the omens and portents. The air-drawn dagger pointing to Macbeth the way to Duncan's chamber is purely subjective. It is a projection of Macbeth's fevered brain. Banquo's ghost is a concrete objective reality. Banquo's ghost appeared to Macbeth because he alone was guilty. Professor Curry, Curry, thinks that it was an infernal illusion created by devils to bring Macbeth to his material ruin. Kenneth Muir, M-U-I-R, remarks, quote, the fact that we no longer believe in demons, and that Shakespeare's audience mostly did, does not diminish the dramatic effect for us, for with the fading of belief in the objective existence of devils, they and their operations can yet symbolize the workings of evil in the heart of men. It is not only to the superstitions, but to the guilty also, that sleep is a, quote, very, V-E-R-I-E, hell and place of damned person, unquote. For it presents into them, quote, terrible visions and monstrous fancies, unquote. The changes in custom and belief do not seriously detract from the universality of tragedy, unquote. This is from the ardent Shakespeare. Critics like Professor Stoll and Shucking are of the opinion that the ghosts of Shakespeare have been made much of by the Romantic critics. The ghosts in Shakespeare are vivified corpses, V-I-V-I-F-I-E-D, vivified corpses within quote. They are objective and grossly melodramatic representations of the supernatural. But it has to be admitted that the supernatural element reinforces the spiritual content of the tragedy. Whether the ghost of Banquo is objective or subjective, it is not very important to us. Whether the Elizabethans believed in the supernatural is another matter. What is significant for the drama is that Shakespeare has succeeded in producing an illusion about its reality. The blood-bolted Banquo appears to our view, and we see with Macbeth the uncanny apparition. Page 14. The appearance of Banquo's ghost serves an important dramatic purpose. It is ironical because Banquo remembers Macbeth's request, quote, "Fail not our feast," unquote. It throws light upon one aspect of Macbeth's character, his vivid visual imagination. The phantom of Banquo may seem to haunt Macbeth long after it has disappeared from the actual stage. It serves to expose Macbeth. Macbeth is appalled at the sight of the ghost and makes certain disclosures which establish his guilt as fact to all. Thus, Banquo's ghost plays an important part in the action of the tragedy. Moreover, it builds up the weird atmosphere of the play. Banquo's ghost makes an undeniable impression on a crowded stage. It creates the atmosphere of horror and mystery. Banquo's ghost is one of, quote, night's black agents, quote, unquote, who haunt Macbeth in the dark world in which he lives. The witches play a far more important part in the creation of the supernatural effect. We do not know Shakespeare's personal opinion of witchcraft, whether he accepted the tenets of James' demonology, or whether he adhered to the skeptical position of Reginald Scot. But the belief in witchcraft could be used by him for dramatic purposes at a time when almost everybody supposed that witches were, quote, channels through which the malignity of evil spirits might be visited upon human beings, unquote. This is from Curry, the book Shakespeare's Philosophical Patterns. Shakespeare has made significant departures from Holinshed in his characterization of the witches. In Holinshed's chronicles, there are a wizard, a witch, and the weird sisters. The sisters predict that Macbeth will be king. The wizard warns against Macduff, and the prophecy about Birnam Wood comes from the witch. Shakespeare makes them all into one. He invests them with a certain mystery. They meet, quote, in thunder, lightning, or in rain, unquote, and, quote, hover through the fog and fill the air, unquote. Their aim is to, quote, wreck the state of man, unquote. In their nature and aspect, they look not like the inhabitants of the earth. They, quote, seem corporeal, unquote, but, quote, melt into the air, unquote, like, quote, bubbles of the earth, unquote. The mystery about them is heightened by their attachment to such abominable creatures as, quote, paddocks and, quote, graymalkins, Graymalkins. They are anomalies of nature. They have withered looks, their fingers are choppy, their lips are skinny, attires are wild. They look like women, yet they are bearded. Their favorite sport is to kill swine for nothing. Another will take revenge on a sailor's wife who has denied her a handful of chestnut. They are just like hags of popular superstition. In Shakespeare's hand, the witches are a combination of the cross and the sublime. On the one hand, they are foul hags with certain powers derived from evil spirits. On the other, they are phantasmal, elemental, airy beings. Shakespeare calls them weird sisters. Quote, two Norn like to be witches, two witch like to be Norns. Norns is Norns, unquote. In Holinshed, the witches are sisters of destiny. Dover Wilson points out, quote, they are not fates or anything corresponding to that conception, for Macbeth exercises complete freedom of will from first to last, unquote. That they are not the original tempters of Macbeth is clear from Macbeth's reaction to their prophecies, his letter to Lady Macbeth and her soliloquies and speeches. Long before they come on the scene, Macbeth has played with the idea of getting the crown unholily, unquote. The thought of murder occurs to him independently without any hint from them. His first act after his second meeting with the witches is the murder of the Macduff family. This has not been suggested by them. So, the weird sisters have no direct share in the action of the drama. Quote, but the influence of the witches, or rather of the evil satanic forces they represent, is a pervasive one and seems to affect in some subtle mysterious way both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, and influences their thoughts and actions. Shakespeare was sufficiently read in demonology to assume that she had, like the witches, given herself to Satan. Page 15. In the great soliloquy, quote, "Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts," unquote, she was in fact invoking the powers of hell to take possession of her body, to suck her breasts as demons sucked those of the witches, unquote. So this is from Dover Wilson. She is indeed possessed. Similarly, Macbeth is also possessed within quote. A mysterious power seems to lead Macbeth to Duncan's chamber. He knows that he has, quote, given his eternal jewel, unquote, to the, quote, common enemy of man, unquote. Macbeth is, quote, tied to a stake, unquote, by invisible bonds. Professor Curry has argued that the weird sisters are in reality demons or devils in the form of the witches. But, quote, whether one considers them as human witches in league with the powers of darkness, or as actual demons in the form of witches, or as merely inanimate symbols, the power which they wield or represent or symbolize is ultimately demonic, unquote. The witches represent forces of disorder, disintegration, and conflict. In their combination of grossness and sublimity, hideousness and mystery, they suggest the very spirit of the play. Their parting words in the first scene strike the keynote of the play. Fair is foul, foul is fair. They introduce us to a world where values are reversed. The Macbeth world is a strange one where, quote, good things of day begin to droop and drowse, and, quote, night's black agents to their praise do rouse, unquote. Where mousing owls prey on soaring falcons, and horses turn wild and eat each other up. Wilson Knight very aptly points out that throughout the tragedy runs the suggestion of, quote, life-threatening, ill-omened, hideous, unquote. The witches suggest the darkness, mystery, abnormality, and hideousness of the Macbeth universe. Quote, weird sisters are nightmare actualized, unquote. So the presence of the witches contributes to the play's atmosphere of horror, mystery, and abnormality. They symbolize the dark forces which are at work in the play. Thus, they reinforce the spiritual tragedy of Macbeth. Question 7. Write a note on the witches in Macbeth and discuss the part played by them in the development of dramatic action. Answer. See answer to question 6, second part beginning with the witches play a far more important part. Question 8. Write a note on the dramatic irony in Macbeth. This is from CU Papers 1996-2002. Or, the operation of destiny as exhibited in the plot of Macbeth is throughout tinctured with irony. Bring out the irony with illustrative references to the text. CU Honours Papers 1999. Or, trace how Macbeth, the untitled tyrant bloody sceptred, is transformed by the end of the play into one of Shakespeare's noblest tragic heroes. CU Honours Paper 2003. Answer. Irony in Greek tragedy is associated with the idea of fate, within quotes, or the, quote, will of the gods, unquote. The chief character of the play, proud and willful, offends the gods by some, quote, excess, unquote, in character, and from the beginning of the play is headed for a doom to which he remains blind to the very end. Irony implies a breach between appearance and reality. It is, as Moulton says, quote, a sort of double dealing in destiny itself, unquote. The operation of destiny as exhibited in the plot of Macbeth is throughout tinctured with irony. The element of mockery appearing always in this, that apparent checks to destiny turn out to be the very means destiny chooses by which to fulfill itself. Macbeth tries to secure himself against the obstacles to the fulfillment of his ambition. The action taken by Macbeth in order to prevent Macduff's being the instrument of retribution is brought by a mocking fate to impel Macduff to his task at the precise moment that he had resolved to abandon it. Similarly, his plot against Banquo and Fleance only half succeeds, and thus it contributes to the exactness with which the destiny is fulfilled. Thus, between Macbeth's expectations and fulfillment, there always falls a shadow. This wide breadth between what things seem to be and what they really are for Macbeth is the work of mocking fate. This is ironical. Page 16. In tragedy, irony in the use of words is adopted to create an atmosphere of omens and portents. This is called tragic or Sophoclean irony. The words are changed with a fatality. They have a deeper ominous significance for the audience of which the speaker is innocent. The speaker unconsciously predicts the future. The speaker unconsciously predicts the future. Macbeth is full of this kind of irony. Duncan places full trust in Macbeth. He calls Macbeth noble Macbeth. He regrets his betrayal by the Thane of Cawdor. Does he know then that he will be betrayed by Macbeth? Indeed, there is no art to read mind's construction in the face. The whole episode of the Thane of Cawdor is charged with irony. Macbeth's words, "So foul and fair a day I have not seen," echo the words of the witches. Fair is foul and foul is fair. This suggests a spiritual kinship between Macbeth and the witches. Macbeth does not know it, but the audience know. When Duncan says, "O worthiest cousin," next line, "the sin of my ingratitude even now," next, "was heavy on me," he does not know that his cousin will commit the worst ingratitude to him. There is indeed deep irony when Duncan invites himself to Macbeth's castle. He unconsciously chooses the path that leads to his disaster. The mocking fate plays an impish trick on man. Both Duncan and Banquo are attracted by the calm beauty of the castle. They are full of praise for it. They do not know that death lurks there. So their words of praise have one meaning for them and another for the audience. The contrast between appearance and reality makes the situation grim and terrible. The porter scene, the banquet scene, and the sleepwalking scene are shot with irony. The drunken porter calls himself keeper of Hellgate, and the play is an ironical commentary on the porter's unconscious description of himself. Macbeth asks Banquo not to fail our feast. Banquo replies, "My lord, I will not." And Banquo keeps his word. Banquo's ghost appears to the consternation of his lord. Macbeth kills Banquo to get peace and security, but actually it gives him uneasiness, which leads to the discovery of his guilt. The sleepwalking scene is an ironical commentary on the heroic, resolute and ruthless Lady Macbeth of earlier scenes. She is continually rubbing the damned spot which nothing can cleanse. All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten the little hand. But it was she who declared, "A little water will clear us of this deed." Quiller Couch observes that irony is, quote, "retrospective rather than prophetic," unquote. It does not, quote, "prepare the spectator for what is to come, but rather, when it comes, reminds him as by an echo that it has been coming all the while," unquote. The dramatic purpose of the irony is that it haunts the audience with retrospective pathos. It creates a pervasive atmosphere of omens and portents and keeps the mind of the audience constantly in a state of awed curiosity and suspense. Quiller Couch rightly remarks, the whole play, as it were, a corridor of dark Inverness Castle, resounds with such echoes. And I know no other tragedy that so teems with these peculiar whispers, as I call them, of reminiscent irony.